Welcome back, everyone. Now that we understand arrays a little better, we can introduce this concept of command line arguments. We've used command line arguments a couple times already, but haven't saw how we can implement this functionality within our own C program. Let's take a look at exactly what a command line argument is, and then we'll see how we can use these in our own programs. When we first load up our Ubuntu virtual machine, we normally open the terminal. And the terminal is just a command line interface that we can use to run commands. On Mac and Linux, we typically call the command line interface a terminal. However, on Windows, you'll often hear it referred to as the command prompt. The terminal, of course, allows you to enter commands, such as the cd command that we've seen. We've used code dot to open up VS Code. We've used GCC to compile our C programs, and a few others. But the first word that you type at the terminal is a command. CD is a command. Code is a command. GCC is a command. More specifically, these commands are just programs written by someone else, and as long as we know how to use them, then we can. We've also seen the use of the ls command to list the current directory. This command is an example of a command that doesn't take any command line arguments. We can simply type the command ls and use it by itself. Clear is another example of a command that doesn't take any command line argument. You simply run the command by itself. The cd command, however, does take command line arguments. It takes the directory that you want to change into. For example, when we use cd to change into our tutorials directory, cd is the command that we're using, and tutorials is a command line argument. It's an input to the cd command. When we compile our code with GCC, and then use a -o, and then the name of the output file, and then the C file that we want to compile, all of these words after GCC, like the -o and the name for the output file and the name of the C file, are all command line arguments. They're inputs to the GCC command. And it turns out that you can use command line arguments in your own programs by accessing these words after the command. So we'll see why this is useful and see how we can use these in our own program. Let's go ahead and run this cd command to change into my tutorials directory, and I'll use code dot to open up VS Code. And I'm just going to exit out of this, and let's create a new file, and I'm going to call this one greeting.c. And in here, I'm just going to do my normal boilerplate. I'm going to make sure I include cs50.h. I'm going to include standardio.h, int main void, curly brackets, and return 0. And this first version isn't going to be anything new. We're just going to prompt the user for their name using getString. And then we're going to print out hello followed by the name. So I can say string, call this variable name, and use getString to prompt the user for a name. And then I'll use printf. I'll say hello. Use a %s followed by a new line, and we're going to pass in name. So this is nothing new, but let's go ahead and save this, and we'll come compile. So I'll run gcc-o greeting.c -l cs50. And we get no errors, so let's just run this with /greeting. And for name, I'll type Chris, and we see we get hello Chris. Now, something kind of annoying about this program is that if I want to run it again and type somebody else's name, like Tom for example, I have to rerun the program, wait to be prompted, type in a name, hit enter, Like, this isn't a big deal, but what if every program worked like this? What if when we compiled our program using GCC, we had to type GCC and then hit enter, and then wait to be prompted for the name of the output file, and then hit enter, and then wait to be prompted for the name of the C file, type that and hit enter? Like, this would be incredibly tedious. So the people who wrote these programs implemented command line arguments so that we can express our whole thought on one line. So if I want to use command line arguments in my code, I could come up here to the inputs of my main function, which up to this point we've been using void here to say that this main function, or really our program in general, takes no command line argument. I can erase void and instead type int argc, comma, string, argv, open and close square bracket. And this is strange syntax, but let's see if we can infer what this is doing. If main no longer has void as its input, which is to say that it takes no arguments, the spoiler here is that this int argc, string argv, square brackets, is a way of saying that it will now take command line arguments. Let's first look at this second argument being passed to main of string argv with square brackets. What might this be? We've seen something very similar to this in our last example of passing arrays to functions as arguments. And this syntax is how we would define an array of strings called argv. And argv is just convention. It's short for argument vector, which is just a fancy way of saying that this array is going to store in it every word that's typed at the prompt when running this program. The int argc, you might be able to infer, argc generally stands for argument count, and this is just an integer that keeps track of the size of the array called argv. Because earlier I claimed that arrays don't keep track of their own length, if we want to know how many words were typed after the prompt, or really how many strings are in this array called argv, we have to be told not just the array of words after the prompt, but also the length of that array. So how can we use this now? Let's just see a simple example. I'm no longer going to prompt the user for their name. And down here, instead of passing the name variable to printf, I'm going to pass in argv bracket 1. Let me save this. I'll come recompile and rerun, but now I'm going to type my name right after /greeting. And we see that we get hello Chris. Let me run this again, /greeting, this time with Tom, and we get hello Tom. So by this logic, it would stand to reason that the string at argv bracket 1 is the first command line argument, which it in fact is. What you might be thinking now though is, what would be in argv bracket 0? Well, instead of telling you, let's just try this, which should always be your intuition when you're curious about something like this. So let's come back into our code and we'll just change this to argv bracket 0. We'll save. Let's come back and recompile, and we'll rerun this with greeting Tom. And now instead of seeing hello Tom, we see hello./greeting. And this is just to say that this array called argv accounts for all of the words passed in at the command line, including the name of the program itself, which will be stored at argv bracket 0. And with this, we can accept words after the prompt of our programs. Let's see how we can use this argc now. Remember, argc is just an integer that tells us how many strings are in argv. Instead of printing out hello and then this %s right here, let's just print out a %i to print out an integer, and we'll do a \n for a new line, and let's just pass argc. And if we save this, let's come recompile, and we'll rerun with just /greeting. And we see that we get 1. 1 is the total length of the argv array, and it's stored in argc. Let's run this again with /greeting Chris, and we see that we get 2. So this is just to say that argc is going to keep track of how many words are typed at the prompt, including your program's name. So let's see if we can do something just a little more interesting than this. Say I want to take 2 names at the prompt, like a first name and a last name. I could do something like hello, and then let's pass in a %s and then another %s, followed by spaces. And we're going to pass in argv bracket 1, and let's pass in argv bracket 2. If I save this, come recompile, and rerun, let's just say John Smith, and we see that we get hello John Smith. So greeting is going to be argv bracket 0, John is going to be argv bracket 1, and Smith is going to be argv bracket 2. We'll see other examples of this in later lessons, but just to see how we can use this argc now, we could do something like, let's erase this. Let me say if argc is equal to 2. Well, let's just print out hello and a single %s, followed by a new line, and we'll pass in argv bracket 1. Else, if the user doesn't type any command line arguments, or if they type more than 2 command line arguments, we'll just print out hello world, followed by a new line. Now if I save this, I recompile. If I run with /greeting Chris, I get hello Chris. If I leave out Chris and just run /greeting, we get hello world. So this is just going to check if the argument count is equal to 2, and if it is, we'll print out hello, followed by whatever command line argument they passed. Hopefully it's a name of some sort. And if they didn't pass any command line arguments, we just say hello world. Now you may see in other books or other tutorials other ways of defining this main function, but the 2 official ways of defining this main function is either with the int main void that we've been doing all this time, or if we want to take command line arguments, we use int main and then pass in int argc string argv with open and close square brackets for now. And we'll see that this is a simplification of sorts, and we'll be taking these training wheels off completely very soon. But again, when we use this keyword string, we must include the CS50 header file. That's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope you all got some value out of this video. If you did, make sure you hit the like button so that I know you want to see more content like this in the future. If you're interested in joining the Discord server, the link is in the description below. In the next video, we'll take a closer look at these exit statuses, like this return 0, and see how these can be useful when building out more complex projects. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.